Hello, everybody. Yeah, I didn't know Karina was going to introduce me because she at the beginning she showed me this bio, and I'm like, no, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that, and there was nothing left. I looked through it, and so I thought, well, I could just introduce myself, like it is my great honor to introduce your next speaker, me. But then I remembered that last night we were encouraged to cultivate not only confidence, raise your right hand, but humility as well. Raise your left hand, and they add together to make integrity. And I thought, well, that wouldn't be very humble of me to honor myself like that. But then I got thinking a little bit about, actually I was about to lie to you. I actually already thought about this a long time ago, but it makes a better story if I would say that then I got to thinking about humility and these other yogic virtues which we tend to think are something that we can attain or achieve through some kind of effort, which means that when you do achieve them, you get to take credit for them and kind of put them in your backpack of accomplishments and feel good about yourself for having achieved those things, unlike some other people who didn't do the work or weren't open enough or didn't surrender, and therefore they didn't attain these yogic achievements like you did. And so that's actually kind of a form of unhumility built into the whole thing, and a form of separation. Really the essence of separation in the human realm is I'm different from you. Could be I'm better than you, or it could be I'm worse than you, but fundamentally it's I'm different from you. It's if I were you, if I were in the totality of your circumstances, I wouldn't be doing as you're doing. I would be more open, or I would try harder, or I would do something, do this, do that. So yeah, I'm going to maybe talk a little, since this is a yoga festival, I think I will kind of frame things in terms of yoga a bit. It wasn't quite what I expected, actually. I'd never heard of Wanderlust before. I'm from the East Coast. So when I was invited, just from the name, I kind of had this image of like this big open field, people with tents, like kind of a hippie vibe, like Wanderlust has like maybe kind of like this outlaw kind of thing, wanderers and people like that. And I kind of expected it to be very different than it is. In fact, I was a bit taken aback and almost dizzy, and noticed a lot of judgmentality coming up in myself. Kind of for a couple hours, I was channeling my inner leftist, which kind of, is sitting in judgment about the, oh yeah, a whole bunch of rich people congratulating themselves on being spiritual, or also like the whole, like the health fetishism, and the body worship, the youth worship, spiritual elitism, like all that kind of stuff, while meanwhile there's Hispanic people, working for $10 an hour in the rooms and stuff like that. And so I was in this kind of state of judgmentality for a while. And then, of course, I thought, okay, so there's the affluent people congratulating themselves on their spirituality, and then there's Charles congratulating himself on not being an affluent person congratulating himself. And like this is all part of the same mindset, which isn't really a yogic mindset. It's all a mindset of judgment and separation, and I'm better than you. And really, what is yoga about? Yoga is, if I had to define it, I would say it's the reunion of that which has been made artificially separate. So anything that brings us together with perhaps alienated parts of ourselves, of our bodies, that's yoga. Anything that brings us together with other people, that develops compassion, that makes us realize that if I were in your shoes, I would do as you do. We're one, basically. That's yoga too. Anything that does the same with those parts of ourselves that we have called nature, and brings us into more intimate relationship with nature, and makes us understand that this world outside of ourselves isn't truly outside of ourselves. It's a reflection, a mirror of something inside of ourselves. That's yoga as well. And so you could say that it's like we've been as a society and as individuals for hundreds of years in a state of separation that's actually intensified over history. And this is kind of the big map that I'm going to offer you, that we live in a civilization built on separation from each other, separation from nature, that takes many, many forms. And that this journey of separation is reaching its most intense moment in our lifetimes as we sit here today. And like anything else that reaches an extreme, it's cracking, it's crumbling, and giving birth to its opposite. And that the set of practices we call yoga are part of this turning, part of this reaching for a kind of world, a kind of society, and a self that's no longer increasingly separate from everything around us. So one way I like to say it is that right now, as a civilization, we're at a transition in our stories, or a transition in our mythologies. The old story being a separate self in a universe outside of ourselves that doesn't have the qualities of a self. That's just a bunch of stuff out there. In that story, because every culture has an answer to this question: who are you? How does the world work? What's important? What's the purpose of human life? Every culture answers this in a slightly different way. And so our culture has answered it. Yeah, who you are is a separate being, and that well-being comes through controlling this world outside of ourselves. There's dangerous forces, competitors, or at least indifferent forces. The forces of nature don't care about human beings. They don't care about you personally. So if you want to be powerful, if you want to be secure, then you need to control that which is outside of yourself. And you might be able to see a little echo here with yogic teachings to the contrary, that it's not about control. But you can see this paradigm of separation played out in many, many aspects of life. For example, in politics, where the idea is, okay, there are these terrorists out there. Government, like foreign policy, there are these terrorists out there, and to make us safe, we have to build walls, build a strong security apparatus, have drones to kill everybody out there who's going to attack us. And through exercising control, we'll be safe. Our well-being will be enhanced. In medicine, we often have the same thing, or agriculture. It's about controlling the germs, controlling the weeds, conquering nature. And this was, the whole idea of conquering nature was something that people embraced enthusiastically as little as 100 years ago. We can see today that none of us really resonate so much with the idea of conquering nature, or even conquering the body. And so another way that this mythology of separation has manifested is in what we call spirituality. Spirituality is part of the same movement in many ways that the conquest of nature or the domination of others is. So, for example, we have a conception of spirituality where it's this separate self making tremendous efforts to conquer or overcome or transcend his or her biology, his or her desires, or the flesh, or something like that. And I'm not saying this is the only spiritual teaching. It's kind of in contrast to Tantra, which doesn't make a dualistic distinction between. Is this getting like too? Okay, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes it starts to feel a little philosophical, and then I start to feel preachy, and then I have to do my dance, because then I don't know. Then I feel less preachy. That wasn't very good for the audio, was it? But all right, so the mindset of separation infiltrates everything that we do. We are born into a world that tells us in so many ways that goodness comes through control, that the purpose of life is to survive, to compete, to achieve security. Economics tells us that human beings are motivated to maximize rational self-interest. Biology teaches us that we're genetically programmed to maximize reproductive self-interest, and that that's the way that life works. And physics tells us that the world operates according to mathematical laws that act on masses out there that don't have, of course not, don't have personality, don't have choice, they don't play, they don't have desires, they don't have consciousness, they don't have intelligence, right? That's only in human beings. The universe outside, we're immersed in that. That's called reality in our story. And in so many ways, we are brought up to internalize that program of conquest. It's in the school system. It's in our language, in the word selfish, for example. Like, why is selfish bad? Why is it bad to just do whatever you want, or do the easy thing, and instead you did the hard thing, and that was good, right? This is all a mindset of war and of conquest. So we're kind of born into this. We're born into a story that's not working anymore. It's not working, for one thing, because this program of control isn't bringing the benefits that it promised. Technology, for example, is a form of control over the world outside of ourselves. And it's not that technology doesn't work, but has it really brought this paradise of leisure and happiness that it promised? Any of you who have traveled to villages in India perhaps have had this experience, where you go there and people are way happier than they are here, even though they don't have much technology and they don't have much money and they have a lot less than we do. Anyway, what I'm saying is that the institutions of separation we internalize them, and they infiltrate even spirituality, which can become then an attempt to transcend, to raise vibrations. Like, why is that good? Why is it good to raise vibrations? What's wrong with low vibrations? What's wrong with something close to the earth? What's wrong with a rock? What's wrong with the soil? Why is sky good? The heavens. Why does divinity live in the heavens? Why does the spiritual person look up? Why do we? What's going on here? This question has an answer, an historical answer, going back 4,000 or 5,000 years to the time when social hierarchies first developed, and the low people were the farmers, and they were enmeshed in materiality, and the higher social status was the priests and the king, whose feet were not allowed to touch the ground. And so to be soiled was bad. Darkness was bad. The world of the flesh, that was bad too. And the holy person retreated from that. And this is something that I think, this is a delusion that we're really waking up from now. And I think yoga is part of this healing of that, because it no longer dissociates the development of the human being with the development of the body. But just like anything else, it can, this reaching for a reunion can be turned against itself and cannibalized by the very powerful forces of separation that seek to commercialize it, for example, that seek to brand it, or that seek to turn it into this kind of way to, this form of identity, and this kind of license to approve of ourselves conditionally, because I am a yogi, because I am conscious, because I am mindful, because I do things with intention. So I think maybe we need to if we really want to bring yoga as a practice into a new story, I think maybe it's good to examine some of those impulses that might arise. I mean, I noticed them arising in me, like if yoga is a spiritual practice and asana is part of yoga, then that guy up there, doing like these amazing postures must be more spiritual than me, must be more developed than me. But at least I'm more developed than all those people out there who aren't doing yoga. Like there's kind of like this kind of smugness, that really turns some people off. And you could just write those critics off as projecting on us, or something like that. But I always like to look for the truth in other people's judgments of me. Maybe if it's even 1% truth. What is it that I'm doing, saying, or thinking that is triggering somebody else to think that I'm sanctimonious or to think that I'm self-righteous? So I'm only supposed to talk for 20 minutes, and then we'll just go into kind of interchange here. So let me just say a little bit about what I like to call the new story, knowing full well that it's not new, that it's actually very ancient and still alive in many ways among traditional and indigenous people. But the new story says, it answers that basic question, who are you, in a different way, and says who you are is the totality of all of your relationships. Who you are is a mirror of everything that is. Every relationship that you have brings out something in you. Everything that happens in the universe is happening to you. Everything that you do has an effect on all beings. In the last yoga class I was in, what was it? The DJ yogi? MC yogi, yeah. That was quite fun. And one of the themes he talked about was the Bodhisattva vow. And he shared this ancient Hindu story about the three boys. How many people were in that class? A few of you. Yeah, it was a super fun class. So he shared this story about the three boys, and there's a wall there, and so the wall is too high for them to climb over. So one of them pushes the other boy up, and he looks over and he says, "Wow!" And he jumps over the wall and runs away. And then the second boy wants to see what it is, so he pushes him up, and he's like, "Wow!" And he runs away too, leaving the third boy by himself. And so he walks, and he finally finds a way to climb over the wall, and he sees this beautiful land of tremendous ecstasy and joy and just gorgeous place. But he doesn't stay there. He comes back so that he can tell other people about it and bring them all over the wall too. So there's this idea that enlightenment is this individual attainment, and that you could just go there by yourself, but if you're super, super nice, then you'll come back and you'll sacrifice your nirvana for the sake of all beings until everybody's enlightened, and then finally will you allow that for yourself. That is the Bodhisattva vow in the old story of separation. In the new story, you realize that because this other person is not separate from you, but part of you, that even if you were to try to stay in nirvana in this beautiful garden all by yourself, you couldn't do it because there's a part of you that's not there, that is hidden from you. So in the new story, the Bodhisattva vow would say, it's not that I will not abide in nirvana until all beings join me. It is, I cannot, because I am not separate from all those other beings. And every person I come across who I judge as being less enlightened, or who I judge as evil, who I judge in any way, that person is a mirror of something in myself that I hadn't seen, especially if they trigger me in some way. And so we can think, thank you for showing me what had been hidden. We could say that to a person or to a situation in life. Thank you for showing me a part of myself that has been hidden. And this would be then a form of yoga, a coming together of that which had been artificially separate. So to bring it back to humility, again, I'll say that it's not something that we can strive for. It's simply the result of seeing accurately, seeing other people as mirrors of ourselves, and understanding that every person is here in some way in service to us, and we to them. The title of the talk was A More Beautiful World, the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. And here, well, one way to explain what that means, it would be a world built on this new story. Built on the story of interbeing, to use Thich Nhat Hanh's word for it. Because we are so immersed in separation, we really don't know what such a world would look like. And it violates what we consider to be normal or even unchangeable. But I think every human being on some level understands as we walk through this society that it's not supposed to be this way, that it could be far, far better, more beautiful, more joyous, more authentic, more intimate, more playful, more leisurely. And understands that this is not just some theoretical could be that depends on things outside of our power, but that we ourselves have agency in whether such a world manifests. It's an irrational thought. When there's 7 billion people out there all making choices independently of me, what does it matter what I do as far as what future humanity lives in? A future of climate change and violence and degeneration, or this more beautiful future that our hearts know is possible. It seems irrational, and it violates what we've learned about how change happens and who we are as separate individuals. But our hearts know better, and our hearts have an ally. The ally being occasional experiences that give us a glimpse of what it's actually supposed to be a human being. And I think that one of the valuable things about gatherings like this, despite all of the criticisms that my inner leftist can muster, is that it creates a space where where people can have, even if it's a brief experience, an experience that shows what life could be, who we really are, how the world could be. And that moment, maybe it could be in a yoga class where all of a sudden it's just so simple. You feel really, really good. And it's not like a drug-induced high, but it's a feeling of well-being that goes all the way to the core. And that feeling, it didn't require vast amounts of material acquisition. It was just an hour away, and it's always an hour away. It's our birthright, and it doesn't depend on expensive branded accessories, or anything like that. You could do it in India wearing a loincloth, and it is done that way. It's right in front of our face. And so and here's something else that I'm just going to throw in there. Like when I'm practicing yoga by myself, I almost never have an experience like that. It happens in groups. Because the group practicing yoga together generates a field or invites a field that then carries us. Like I find myself being able to do postures. I took Rod Stryker's class yesterday. Amazing. It's like I guess he's a famous yogi and deservedly so. But I found myself doing poses that there's no way I could do them at home, because this field of yoga was carrying me. And that's another reason that perhaps, another kind of way that humility can come from accurate perception. That in enjoying that posture, who do I give thanks to? Do I give thanks to myself for trying really hard? Well, yeah, I did try hard, but why did I try so hard when I didn't try very hard at home? It was because this field was carrying me and putting me in a place where I tried hard. So I give thanks to yoga itself. I give thanks to everybody else in the room. I give thanks to the organizers of this event. I give thanks to the lineage that Rod Stryker belongs to. I give thanks to the society that supported that lineage. I give thanks to the ancestors that created a world that allowed this to happen. I really can't give thanks to anything less than everything, really. And I guess we could tie that back into the Bodhisattva vow to understand that enlightenment is a group effort that we can all contribute to. As we come away from an event like this, we carry a little bit of that field with us. It's not as my inner leftist would say that, you get a temporary yoga high and you all feel good, then you go back home to your whatever work, which could be in a rapacious corporation, but you get to congratulate yourself on how mindful and yogic you are. No, it's not quite like that. It's only like that if you don't really believe that there's something else in yoga. And to not believe that there's something else in yoga is actually the same kind of imperialistic mindset that is responsible for a lot of the damage happening on this planet, because it devalues the things that come from outside of our ways of knowing and outside of our worldview, things that come from, 1,000-year-old traditions in other countries, for example. And it says, that doesn't have anything real at its core, but it does have something real at its core. It does have a transformational impact that reaches everybody, rich or poor, and so we go back to the world outside of this a little bit changed, because we experienced something that we recognized as real. And the reality of that punctures the reality of the old story. It punctures normal. It makes normal not quite seem so normal anymore, not quite seem so acceptable anymore. Or you could even say not seem so real anymore. It seems more of kind of like this charade that we don't really believe in. And our life energy then, it begins to retreat from those things we don't believe in and we don't see as so real anymore. And it kind of then carries us out of that story into the sacred space in between stories, from which something new can be born. And that new thing that wants to be born, and that we all serve in one way or another, is the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. So I think I'll end it with that and just see if anyone would like to comment on anything I've said, ask questions, or do a dance.